Okay, everyone. I'd love to welcome you back to another episode of Dev Talk, the new podcast from CenterPoint Integrated Solutions, where we always talk about relevant topics around development, and we try our best to give you some insight, tips, and advice along the way. Joining us today, as always, we are pleased to be sitting again with Greg Toler, the founder, CEO of CenterPoint Integrated Solutions. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
From his days starting out at UPS to now running a multi-million-dollar company responsible for taking care of some of the best brands out there, knowing what it takes to provide strong project management is where you can really make an impact in the development process. Wouldn't you agree, Greg?
Absolutely.
It's just, it's one of these things we can just, honestly, we could sit here and talk forever, but we're going to try to dive into it and try to be as concise as we possibly can to give you guys some little nuggets and, again, some tips that maybe you can take out in the field. So jumping into the topic, Greg, it's pretty simple. You've seen it all in this business, and establishing and executing our topic for today is one of the toughest things for teams to do well. Easy to talk about, easy to, probably put down in manuals and all that other good stuff, but it's really hard to do. There's so many elements to successful project management, but one of the biggest ones is being able to execute high-level strategic oversight. In my opinion, and I know it's yours and everybody else that's in development, it is the backbone for project management, and not just doing it, but doing it well. All right, Greg, so let's talk about this piece. What do you think the key factors are to establishing strong and strategic oversight on a project? What does that look like? And what tips can you give our audience on how to achieve it?
Sure, Chris. In my experience and in my opinion, I think the schedule and obviously the budget are the two most critical parts of the project. When I say schedule, I've seen some really horrific schedules, and I've seen some really good ones.
I bet you've seen them all.
Yeah. And just to elaborate on that, building the schedule, that's where you learn exactly how all the pieces are going to fit together and how the timing is going to work, and make sure it's going to work for your project and when you want to get the store open or start ringing the cash registers. If you've got a great construction schedule and you're tracking it every week and you're updating it, sure, things are going to change, but at least you can see instantaneously what tasks are affected, and you can address those tasks to keep them either on track or get back on track. So to me, monitoring that schedule, making sure it's built correctly up front and it truly has every task that you're going to be faced with, both with the jurisdiction and permitting and entitlement, everything, and how all that ties together to build a critical path schedule. That's the most important.
So at CenterPoint, who would you have building out, let's say you had a new client, let's say you were starting from scratch, who's responsible for building out the schedule?
So in our development managers, as part of our process, again, we're going through feasibility and due diligence. We're identifying how the process has to work, what approvals have to happen before the next approval can be applied for, and laying all that out on a schedule. That's really the only way you can wrap your head around where does this end? Where does this project finish? And it takes a while and it takes a lot of effort to build a good schedule, but once it's built, that's your Bible for the project.
Yep. No, that makes sense. It's I would imagine if it's, if it has holes in it and cracks in it and it's not, not well thought out, you're a little bit behind the eight ball right from the get-go. So that makes sense. So talk to me a little bit about, obviously building the schedule is so crucial. What about like jurisdictional processes for entitlements and permitting? How important is that piece?
Again, that's another critical piece, especially in today's market across the country. Jurisdictions are understaffed. They've added more regulations to the approval process. It's getting more and more difficult to get projects approved quickly. And so we want to make sure we go in and we truly understand the step-by-step process, what task has to happen before the next task can occur. And I think that's where a lot of clients that come to us where they've been tripped up the most is they didn't know that you needed this approval before this could happen. And now you've got a month delay because you've got to go get another approval.
Which part of the country are the jurisdictions most friendly to development? Is it, right now, kind of southeast? And
Southeast is a little bit easier, although Florida is really difficult. Texas is not too bad, although they are getting there. I would say, the Midwest states are probably the easiest states to get approvals and get it moved through and get your project completed.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. So lastly, I mean, we talk all the time about whether it's a relationship or whatever it may be, but, communication being the most important thing. In my opinion, communication is it's one of those, we sometimes forget about it, and it sounds so easy and everyone thinks they're great at it. And it's so crucial in the success of whatever you end up doing. Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on communication and that whole process and why that's so important when it comes to strategic oversight.
So just to tie that back into the schedule, once we've laid out a very, very detailed schedule, we do an analysis to see if there are opportunities to pick up time in the project. And some of those identification or tasks that we've identified where we can pick up time, they come with additional risk. So once we've built the schedule, we identify those opportunities, and then we sit with the client and say, we could cut off, 2 months out of this schedule, but you're going to take on some risk by going ahead with, design before you have finished entitlement, for example. And so understanding your client and their priorities and making sure that it's being communicated to us and we're communicating back to the client, that's what it's all about. And it's helping the client try and save time, try and save money, and go as fast as you can. At the end of the day, if you don't have that and you're not communicating well and you don't have a great schedule, then there's so many other elements that can go wrong. But these are one of the biggest. And if you don't execute them at a high level, it's like being on a sailboat without a rudder. You don't know where you're going to go.
At CenterPoint, you guys work with a ton of different clients, right? Whether it's, retail space, industrial space, hospitality space, lots of different, as we all know in development, there's, there are some clients and some businesses that are a little more hair on fire. There are some that not so much. Is it any really good lesson that you can kind of think just from your career of lots of different personalities out there, and I know the companies can be different, but then the personalities within the companies can be different. So one second you can be talking to someone that is this way versus this way. Probably has to make it tough for your teams to navigate that a little bit and figure out how to work with different personality types and stuff. Any good words of advice on kind of the best way to tackle that one?
Yeah, today, what I see the most is people will come to us and they say, we want to open, 50 stores next year. And I'm like, how many sites do you have under contract right now? And they say 10. And it's like, you're not going to open 50 stores this year because you just can't do that anymore. So getting out ahead of that site selection and having, whether you want to call it land banking, there's other terminologies for it, but getting out ahead of that and understanding, you got to be looking at a 2 to 4 year plan for rolling out stores or a program. And I just see it over and over again where people aren't thinking that far out and they're scrambling. They're always running, chasing sites, trying to pick up time, and it just never works out for them.
Do you feel that, I know it's tough, especially when a business is working with new clients, and it's that fine line, right, of trying to put your company in position to earn new business with new clients, but at the same time, do the things that are right and try to communicate those, even sometimes if the client might not want to hear it, but hopefully that client respects it. Is that kind of how you approach things and kind of, have your team approach things? Always try to be proactive and honest and upfront. And how's that look?
No, I would say, as we go through the feasibility process and due diligence and even starting the entitlement design, there's always going to be some issues that you need the client to weigh in on. So we address that. We basically communicate with every client weekly on a development call. We give them an update on the schedule. If there's an issue, we talk about the issue. And, it's real estate development. There are always going to be issues. There are always going to be change orders. And getting that in front of the client as soon as possible helps them make a better decision. So that's part of our communication effort. And again, as we're going through and finding out information, if we see something that is a showstopper, that we think is a showstopper, we drop the pencils, call the client, and talk about it.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I know extremely recent example where, we just communicated to a client on a potential project and, might even put us in a position where we aren't earning the business for that project, but we gave them some really good, good insight and some good information that they can take back and they can digest. And I think at the end of the day, we probably feel pretty good about that. So any Any good examples that you kind of want to leave with the audience of, of some strategic oversight and what we did to achieve it and maybe how that really helped the client in the long run?
Yeah, we recently had one of our clients hired a new consultant to come in and do basically our scope of services. And it's a great example of a schedule that wasn't built correctly. And once the project was nearing the end, everybody knew that they weren't not going to make the completion schedule. And fortunately for us, they called us to see if we could help them out. And we went down there and helped them out on the construction management side and got them open. We were able to talk to the jurisdiction and phase that opening so that, because they didn't need the whole facility all at once, but they needed parts of it that were more critical than the other. So we were able to negotiate with the jurisdiction to get almost phased TCOs for each section of the building. Again, that's the difference between how we do it and how some other consultants do it.
Greg, once again, that was great stuff. And thanks for taking us behind the scenes on what it takes to create this important element of good development. So easy to say that you provide it or can do it, but it's so tough for companies to do it right. Another episode and hopefully some great takeaways. Greg, as always, so good to have you on the podcast and so good to, just sit here and talk development with you. Very informative for our audience. We hope you can all join us next time when we touch upon the importance of developing a good process combined with what it takes to ensure that your folks follow it. As we say it at the end of every podcast, if you have questions, you want to talk development, or you just want to reach out to us to pick our brains on anything and everything development, please give us a call, shoot us an email, or reach out through our website. Until next time,